Hello, everybody in LinkedIn land and beyond, YouTube, Twitch, wherever else we live stream nowadays. I don't know. There's too many platforms. Hello, as you can see, I am poorly lit and in a completely different background today. So I feel very virtually naked because I am missing my neon lights, my studio lights. So yeah, this is what my complexion looks like IRL. Terrible. Hello, Emily. How are you?
Hey Toby, I'm at home as usual. Got the lights blaring and the glasses, which I still haven't sorted out. Might do someday. I'm all good. You're a little fuzzy as well, so like you're kind of like not quite in focus. So it's like some kind
Oh,
of weird. You just need some
is this
neon. Not
is this better? Is this too close?
okay, right. This is what people don't tune in for, you know. I'm good. How
I,
are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I'm on site at a client's office in London today, so hence why I've got this lovely acoustic wall here, very spongy. And I've got a. Emily thought I was drinking a beer, but it's actually San Pellegrino. So
Oh, well, I feel like you
you
need
know,
to tell everybody that.
well, we at some point for this live stream, I want sponsors, right? So that could be San Pellegrino. Freeformers Unplugged, brought to you by San Pellegrino, which is very
It's
middle
not.
class.
It's
It's
really
not.
not.
It's not. We're not affiliated with any fruit-based carbonated drink. But if anyone does want to sponsor us, let us know, carbonated or otherwise. So this week's title is "You're Not Designing for Learners." And then it kind of runs out. Why human-centered learning is a dead end. Go on, Emily. We talked about this last week when we kind of threw some topics around here. What's your hot take on the title?
Oh my gosh, where do I start? So, when I come to these, I do a little, I think beforehand. We've talked about this before. Some people can just, as you say, Toby, talk to think. That's you. And some people really need to think before they start opening their mouth, and that's me. And I'm sure all of you viewers have noticed that when I don't think beforehand, it just kind of trails off and goes a bit random. So, I think there are five main problems with human-centered. I know, five.
Wow, you've really thought about this.
I
Go
really
for
have
it.
thought
Five.
about this. Yeah. Okay. Well, I can list all five, and then maybe we can go through some of them.
Cool.
So there's learning for learning's sake, in
Hmm.
which learning teams, so learning and development, learning, whatever you want to call them, um, are essentially producing learning for the sake of producing learning, of justifying their productivity and their outputs. There's definitely a failure of measurement in learning design, and human-centered design definitely leads into that, where you're producing learning. I mean, it ties into the first one a little bit. You're producing learning so you've got people like it, and people, yeah, they liked it, they were engaged, therefore it's brilliant, without translating it to your business outcomes. Bums on seats, if you like. There's what does human-centered even mean? Like, there's a difference between human-centered, learner-centered, human-centered, and then actually, don't we also need business-centered as well? The number four is the one which it just grinds my gears when a client says, or a prospective client says, we want to do something that is human-centered design, and then we want it to be e-learning module, training session,
Yeah.
workshop, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's like you've defined the thing you want without like, how is that human-centered design if you've already got an output in mind? And I understand the pros and cons. I understand why people want it. I know you've done it before in proposals for us, and I've been like, how can this be a thing? And you're like, yes, but I'm never going to sell it otherwise. Like, I get it, but it grinds my gears, this one. And number five disappeared, so that's great. So four.
It's not a problem anymore. There we go. Number five literally just ceased to exist. Have you found it?
Uh, yeah, I mean, this is ChatGPT, like, what's the word? Synthesizing my answers, and it's giving me four, and then it's giving me five. Um, there's also learning teams assuming they know best, I think, as well. It's kind of a common thing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
that
I,
sort
I
of
like that one.
arrogance and trust them.
See, I've used the word arrogance and L&D in the same sentence before, and have been swiftly shot down by notable
Yeah,
thought leaders within the learning and development space because, like, well, no, we know what we're talking about, and it's like you know what you're talking about in terms of the learning space, but practically no one actually cared. Like, no one really cares about L&D apart from
L&D
L&D.
people. And you know what? I'm a thoroughbred L&D person, and I I love it. I really do love it in some regards. And like, I love learning and I love the theory of learning and adult learning. And like, I have a postgraduate certificate in like how you do learning and stuff. I love it. But also, like, there's just this touch of like, we know better. We know better than the people who are living it because it should be done in this way to these kind of theories and this kind of thing. And don't even get me started. I would not get me started on the fact that L&D just sees itself above HR. Like literally, you are in HR, and I've been the same. Okay, I have 100% been the same. Like refuse to be like I was part of HR, but you know what? You are. We are, and we've got to embrace that and support our HR colleagues rather than doing them down. Oh, I
And
have
I think
opinions.
this, this is the first one where you've come straight out of the gate. Usually, it's me going, this is all the stuff, but this is great. For me, I'm gonna just. There's probably 2 points, right? It's in the title as well. You're not designing for learners. You don't have an organization full of learners. That's absolute bullshit. Like you have employees. And it's even when people teams call themselves, oh, our people. They're not your people, they're your employees. There's a contractual obligation that has to be fulfilled 2 ways. It's called employment, they're employees. To name them anything else, colleagues, people, learners, kind of brushes the issue of design under the carpet and presents kind of your own solution that you want to design before thinking about the actual employee and what their journey is. Um, and then I
So do you
think
think
it's
it should
that.
be? Sorry, just to cut across you there. Do
No,
you
no,
think it
go
should be
for it.
like rather than learning and development? Are we talking about employee development then? Maybe it's
Uh,
just that.
well,
Maybe.
possibly, like it makes sense, but like it's. I know this is where the muddy waters of like human centered design, thoroughbred, proper human centered design that doesn't focus on learning, and then learning kind of cross over into this Venn diagram of like shit that nobody wants. Like essentially is what you get to. Like if you applied human centered design properly as a holistic employee experience initiative, you would start designing things. You start designing things that matter to employees, but also, and this is the big thing, you'd stop designing things that don't matter. And this is my biggest gripe is that when you look at human centered design for learning, you still end up designing things that don't matter. Like because it's like, how can I best design a webinar or workshop using human insight? Where you're completely disregarding whether a webinar or workshop is the right thing. And don't give me this wishy-washy explanation that it's like, oh, it's experience design. No, it's still, I'm going to take people out and put them in a room for a day. Whether it's got wallpaper or not doesn't really matter. It's actually what are you delivering to those people and why? And actually, is it going to affect their day to day? Because probably not. And I think the gains you can get in performance with an individual are about changing the employee experience journey, not learning. Now, I'm not disregarding learning or professional development at all. I think there are some validity in some of the stuff that goes on, but there's a massive bucket of crap that gets
Mm,
delivered and sold at the upcoming Learning Technologies Conference. It's just like you walk around and go, who is buying this and perpetuating that this stuff is good or okay that or anyone wants? You know, the thing I'm probably going to try this is I'm going to find someone not in L&D and take them to Learning Technologies with me and ask them what they think of some of the coolest stuff at Learning Technologies. Because I bet you bottom dollar they kind of go meh. But I look, I'm willing to be convinced otherwise. But that's why I'm going to take someone who's not in L&D with me because I think that is the perspective I genuinely care about the most, not my own or the other learning and development people. To be brutally honest.
So if anyone wants a trip up to Learning Technologies in May, it normally is, isn't it? Then let us know in the comments. And Toby's already primed you to tell him it's rubbish.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get less comments today because we had to reschedule the LinkedIn live link. So those people who did register to attend are probably sat there going, "Where did this event go?" So if you are joining us, please do say hello in chat because usually we got some lovely friends who have probably just missed out on us this week, but they'll get us on catch up because we are now a podcast platform. So there are a few people out there watching. Just drop a quick hi in chat and let us know how you're getting on. So Emily, let's take
Toby.
your points. Let's use your points as the framework because if we don't, I end up just meandering like I just did for the past 4 minutes. So let's take point by point. What's point one?
Learning for learning's sake. So essentially, Learning teams often create learning because they need to prove that they're doing something useful because they exist in a function, and whether that's an internal learning team doing that, and then an external, hiring an external agency. um I in the comments start and I get so distracted. Hello
Turn them
Karen,
off.
hello
Turn them off.
Joe.
I will do the comments bit. You just turn them off.
Oh, I don't even know how to do that. Right, I think I'm just going to maximize this. Right, you can respond to all of them. I'm ignoring them now. Sorry, everybody. I love your interaction, but my brain can't cope. So, learning for learning's sake, just basically putting stuff out there because you have the budget and the time to do so.
I think that happens all the time. Learning
What's
for
the
learning's
worst
sake.
example of that you've seen? An
Ugh.
example. Start with one.
Hey, I talked about this one before, I think. So, whilst I was at an organisation, they were. I'm going to try and anonymise
Avoid
this one.
names. I know exactly who you're talking
Um,
about as well. So,
but yeah, you do. But there was this really great initiative internally. It was changing the way a particular department in this organisation worked, and they'd worked with an external partner to essentially recraft their whole strategy and org design about how they get stuff done. And they created this pretty cool interactive PDF. And it kind of detailed everything, and it was, like I say, it was interactive. It had embedded videos, it had links to videos at least. It had links, had contents pages, like pretty good. And I was asked to turn it into an e-learning module using Gomo. And I, at first, I refused because I was like, I don't see the benefit of me transposing this already interactive PDF that's had some beautiful graphic design onto it, and then chuck it into an e-learning piece of an e-learning platform. Like it just didn't make sense to me. And my stakeholder couldn't rationalize that to me other than, can you just do it, please? Because we're the learning team. So I think when you look at learning for learning's sake, that makes a lot of sense, right? The department themselves had already created this resource themselves that was usable. Yet I was going to spend what, 2 or 3 weeks building this into an e-learning module. Didn't really seem to make sense to me. I mean, do you have any examples?
well, before I can think of the only benefit I can think of your people wanting to put it into an e-learning module is if you want to get learning analytics on it, because it's harder to get analytics on a PDF, right? It's harder to see how many people have opened it, but it's not impossible. And there's alternative solutions that wouldn't have a massive barrier to entry, by which I mean logging into your LMS system, finding your freaking thing, loading it. Like, and let's face it, they're not exactly the most intuitive things in the world, are they? Um, yeah, let's jump on learning platforms. We when I was in
No, it's too easy. It's low hanging fruit. If anyone in chat has used a learning platform that they think is really good, let me know.
oh yeah, because
I
they're all terrible.
Well, like I even
but
went on the
but
explanation of consumer grade ones, though, right? So even masterclass.com or masterclass.com, if you're from where Emily's from, is that even that I paid for is still rubbish. Like I used it and went, I just don't want to go back to this. Like the user design, like the user interface is very shiny, but practically it's no better than an internal system. And Andrew came with a comment just about learning technologies. It's only disappointing if you have expectations which aren't met, referring to learning technologies. I mean, I've had
you mean if you
expectations
have
that haven't.
expectations?
I've had expectations that haven't been met for the past 10 years at learning technologies, to be completely honest. Yeah, maybe I should
Maybe your
lower my
expectations are wrong.
expectations.
Yeah, I think
Or
that's
my
what we're getting
expectations might
from
be
this.
wrong. Maybe I'm just not a learning and development person, right? And this is the conversation that you have with learning and development people. Having been in the industry for the best part of 15 years, actually, I think there's a broader mission in which L&D sits in that it's kind of ignoring to its own discredit. But hey, there we go. So learning for learning's sake. Have you got? Yeah, that's what the question was. Have you got any
Have
examples?
I got any examples? Many, many examples. But I think a lot of the time, any of those sort of leadership days, of which I've done a lot, and some of which have been great, I think, and really entertaining, and some of which may have sparked some ideas and
Mhm.
things, but um, at the same time, if they're not embedded throughout, like if you just go on a 1 day isolated training course, even if you have a great time, which is not the point, by the way, is you're not there to be entertained, you're there
Can
to
can I
learn
can I
something.
interject there? I once
Yeah.
literally had a brief come through that I had a meeting with this potential client. This is years ago now, but they
Mm.
came to me and they were like, we want to do a 1-day workshop for our leadership team. I was like, cool. What do you want to get out of it? Oh, we just want to bring people together to have a good time. So why have you contacted me? You may as well contact Go Ape or an escape room.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why you come to a learning and development person to figure out how to entertain 10 senior leaders in an organization for a day. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, there's nothing there
Mm.
other than,
Mm.
get everyone drunk, feed them, and, send them on a zip line.
So I think
Not,
the worst one
not
I
in
ever
that
had,
order.
the worst one I ever had was to create a conference learning session, conference, right? So, 200 people, all managers there, to introduce them to the new leadership framework, which was my personal favorite thing I have ever done in all time. Sarcasm. Which, which was three behaviors. Was it three behaviors? Nine whatever sat under behaviors with 27 skills or something. And everyone was expected to learn this. My personal favorite of all of them was we adopt speed as a habit. I'm just going to leave that there and we're going to move swiftly on so you can see how well that one went down. So yeah, learning for learning's sake. You're doing something to prove your own point, or because, to that one, that was the CEO of a big company saying, actually, learning team, create me something that's going to get my message across the team to everybody. When actually, maybe a comms campaign is going to be better than a conference session.
And I think we'll probably leave comms to a completely different live stream, because the measurement and impact of comms is something I've been grappling with
Yeah,
for a while, because it just doesn't,
let's
that
not
part
get in
doesn't
there.
happen. But I think it's just like you say, learning for learning's sake, right? Like, does this need to be designed? Does it need to be the learning team? Does it need to does it need to be the learning team that's doing this? Is it really the best use of our time? And I think it's the thing the industry and consultants the world over have grappled with, is like saying no, because stakeholders come primed with I need an e-learning module or a workshop. So that's kind of interesting. Like, what was the second point you had on there?
I was talking about the failure of measurement in learning design and how that means that, especially human-centered learning design, or allegedly human-centered learning design.
Well, and then this comes back to the broader piece about it sitting within HR, right? Because learning and development struggles to measure its impact because it designs from the perspective of learning and development, not holistic employee experience, HR and people strategy. So, but I do know from experience, there's a failure a level above, that actually the measurement above that, or the leadership above that, the measurement isn't any better anyway. So it's kind of filtered down from the top that broadly in the people industry or the HR industry, people find it tricky to measure stuff. And it isn't actually, well, for our money, because this is what we've spent the best part of 2 years designing, we don't think it's actually that difficult. And everyone we've spoken to goes, oh, actually, that just seems like common sense. The annoying thing about common sense is it's not that common. And I think this is where I come to, right? Because the irony isn't lost on me that our partnership with 1J Esports and Phoenix Group has just been nominated for Learning and Development Initiative of the Year. So there's a bit of irony there, but the reason why that's interesting, because Phoenix Group and 1J Esports are not a learning and development team. They're not a learning and development company. They're an esports company. So this is the massive thing we're waving the flag for, is that, hey, the way the world works isn't created, defined by learning and development initiatives, and sometimes it feels like that's what we say. The thought leader who questioned me when I said learning and development was arrogant, the reason why I said that was because the question they put out there was, how do learning and development teams reshape organizations to be successful in the future? And I said, that's quite arrogant to assume that it'd be learning and development's position to even craft that. Like, that doesn't really make sense. So I think L&D gets lost in an echo chamber of its own design, and kind of does this to the rest of HR, let alone the rest of the
Mm.
organization, but completely disregards and distances itself with comms for one thing, right? And there are some organizations, I do get it, that are, blended those two departments really well together. But actually, this seamless integration of all these facets of employee experience and how they talk together and link to each other, L&D seems to be the one that puts its head over its ears and kind of ignore the rest of it more than most. Again, in my experience, that's what I've seen.
I think so. But I have seen, coming like circling back a little bit to measurement, I have seen some really, really, really good examples of people measuring it. So I had a fantastic conversation with somebody else called Emily, who is a learning development manager at Bravissimo, which is an underwear company. They're probably more than that, but basically, yes, retail. And she was telling me how absolutely everything they do is translated into business outcomes. Their HRD is so on it that every single initiative or any sort, it has to absolutely translate to a strategic outcome the business is going to do, and they have to measure it, and they do measure it, and because it's embedded within, then they use it like throughout, and everything is measured, and everything is saying this is the quantifiable impact we are having. So it is possible to do it, but it involves a massive rethink. And for some businesses, that's, it's hard. It's really big, and especially when you've got changing priorities and things. If you can't, like, I don't know about you, but I've worked at some places, or I've worked for, like, as a contractor, places where the priorities change like every 30 seconds, and it feels like, or as soon as somebody else comes in, or then they just want to like wipe away whatever anybody else did. So
Yeah.
that's a big challenge as well, I think. I've also recently been doing a project with a company where the learning is managed by the product officer, like product director, even. And that is a completely different way of looking at things, because it's all about MVP, right? Getting straight away to what's the quickest and fastest way we can do it to reach the outcome we want to reach. Like, we're not worried about features, we're not worried about like making it look nice and all of that. It's like, how can we get there fastest? What's the thing to use? We're not using an LMS. We're using Circle, which is basically very, very limited. But you know what? It does what it says on the tin. It has what you need. It has all the functionality you need. And just the way that that project is being run and managed is so completely different to anything I've seen, to many things that I've seen before. And so
Mhm.
I think you're right. It's like taking lessons from other places is a really key thing for L&D to do. And then you taking those measurements from other places, whether that's marketing, whether that's product design, or what have you.
Just a quick interjection. My phone has now told me it's getting too hot. So if I suddenly disappear and chuck you into limbo, I apologize, but I will be momentarily back. Okay, so if
You better.
see, I'll definitely be back. I will be in lower resolution and a bit juddery, but I will join from a different device. Well, let's just go to the comments. So Joe, who Joe, who hasn't got an L&D background, does ask a very valid question: how many people identify the outcome of the training prior to planning learnings?
And also, how many people think they know what an outcome is and they have no flipping clue as well?
Well, and there is this conversation going on about moving towards performance consultancy, which I do get, but again, it's having this conversation in the echo chamber of its own design, rather than going, actually, if you want to truly understand the performance of the things you're delivering to people, you need a much better holistic strategy on how to do this, right? That's our view, right? That's why we're here talking. Andy has put common sense to be missing from most walks of life, predominantly L&D and HR these days.
Ouch. But,
Yeah.
also fair.
Um,
No, I mean, the thing is, I'm going to push back ever so slightly that it's not that it's not missing common sense, but I think the reason why it's missing, this isn't even pushing back, this is expanding your point. The reason why I think common sense is missing is that work's just really hard, don't you find? Like, everybody's expected to do more for less these days. Like,
like,
and so
I,
you don't even have the space to like really critique and question, and you don't have the space to consult different stakeholders. And to be honest, even if you do, it can take like 10 years to get anything back again because it's not their priority. So I think it is actually really hard to apply common sense to a lot of things.
and I think that's like, we're talking about this. We're not saying it's easy. Like just Andrew's chimed in there that an MVP is an excellent concept. but the focus is often on minimum rather than viable.
Viable, yeah, fair.
But I think that's the case, right? Is that when you look at products and service design, like in the nicest possible way, there are people and departments in businesses that have figured this stuff out already and are doing it really, really well. And therefore, we should be learning from them. Like the thing that someone I used to work with is like, we steal with pride. We go to other areas and we look at what they're doing and we adopt it. But again, this is the thing, like, is that if we look at what we did with 1J Esports, what we could have done was said, tell us everything you know, and we're going to create a live streaming community management content creation program. We didn't do that. We went, you facilitate it and design. You facilitate it. You lead on the design, or we'll lead on the design. You feel like we this was true collaboration, and actually, we then ended up with something that, you know, online facilitation baffles me that L&D thinks it's got online facilitation right, because there are people out there like Chris O'Gara who do it way better than anyone else. Even
Yeah.
I, who've been doing this for years, like tried to replicate the way he does stuff. And it's like, wow, that is bloody hard. But
And
he's not an
do you
L&D
know,
guy. He's just some guy in his bedroom in Ireland.
and that was quite hard, like for me when we did that, because I was like, I want to put like the learning angles into it. Like I want to make it like so he's not just talking at people without really understanding that actually you don't need to have a. Sometimes people just want information and then to have a conversation. They
Mm.
don't want everything to be, like following a learning cycle and everything, which I still think has its place, definitely. And the way that Chris does it, just yeah, as a conversation, but stopping, going off on a tangent to answer what people need answering in the moment. Yeah, maybe it's harder for a bigger group because we've obviously only seen him do it with like 6 or 7 people. But everybody got so much out of that.
And he does it with thousands of people now, like on Twitch,
I
right?
know, I know, but it's not the same. It's not the same that you're necessarily learning something, like because when he does this like streaming games, that's different. That is different.
Or electrocuting himself. If you're not following Chris O'Gara, also known as the Gara Show on YouTube, do go check out his content. Good friend of the show. Will, our lovely friend Will Proctor, has chimed in and says, yes, steal with pride. And that's it, right? I think again, we use that word arrogance. The arrogance that L&D thinks it's got the best answers to these problems is like, I don't think it does. I've been there, I've seen it enough to kind of go, everything I'm seeing at any conference or anything is like, if we just literally went out of our lane for about 5 minutes, like one of the conferences I went to last summer was a PR conference, right? And I learned way more at that PR conference about how I could change behavior and mindset in organizations than I did in the 2 learning conferences I went to last summer. And it's like bringing some of that. We like learning people love learning and they have this innate curiosity, but employees, learners, don't necessarily have that baked in. Otherwise, they'd probably be working in L&D, right? So
No. And I will say though that you do see learning, but it's always positioned as a really amazing thought piece. What can marketing learn? No, what can learning learn from marketing? Right? How many times have you seen that? I reckon if you type it in on Google, you would get like 6 pages of hits of the same topic.
yeah,
So I thought you were about to do it there. Don't do it. But I bet it is that. Because people like to think that we're borrowing things and we're taking things, and maybe some people are, but it's not a holistic change.
no. And I just want to go back to the measurement thing, and then we'll move on to point 3. I was working with a client that was looking at their graduate program, and before their graduate program, they had summer placements. Before summer placements, they had kind of like they'd go to schools, and there was this whole funnel of how they get people onto a graduate program that lasted like 2 to 3 years. And I said, cool, well, where's the data about, how many people interact with one to follow? Where's the funnel? Where's the data that demonstrates the funnel? And because it was 2 or 3 separate teams that delivered these things, they had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I couldn't believe, I mean, I can believe it, but I also couldn't believe it. I was like, so you don't know how many people attend this session in schools that then converts to a placement that then converts into a graduate? Like, no idea. It's like, well, how do you know you're being effective? Another one, this was an internal comms example. I was like, oh, cool, you sent out that email. What was the click-through rate? What was the open rate? What was the dwell time? And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, we don't measure that. I was like, how do you know your email is
Why
effective
not?
then?
It's
Like
not hard to
it is
do.
just basic stuff. It isn't. There's no excuse for it anymore. This is basic stuff that marketing figured out 20 years ago, and
Mm.
like that's only just catching up, right? Funnel management and looking at advocacy and all that kind of stuff is like that evolution that we talk about. But I think, but like I say, I'm not just throwing this at and leveraging levying this at like the learning industry. It's holistic employee experience that needs to be considered when you look at this. If you don't, you'll never manage it. L&D by itself will not do it. Internal comms by itself will not do it. Recruitment by itself will not do it. It's a concerted effort for those three departments and more to stitch all this stuff together. The problem is the current structures of HR don't allow that to happen. But that is a different live stream, and we should move swiftly on to point 3.
What human-centered even means.
Wow.
So
Learning.
human-centered
Sorry. So
design.
I'm just going to go back to the comments because Joe should put
Okay,
learning should be a two-way process.
right.
Um, Involvement embeds the knowledge of sharing. Joe, you should be in the L&D industry. You're wasted as an accountant. Oh, you're not an accountant, but the face of finance within HR. And Andrew's actually written something about it.
Oh,
So
put the
yeah,
link in,
and
Andrew. I'm
yeah,
sure everyone wants to
please
read
do
it.
put the link in. We'd love to read that. That'd be really cool. Yeah, nice. Sorry, so I cut you off. What does human-centered design
Well,
actually mean?
so what human-centered design even needs in that often if you're going with learning needs, they're often dictated by HRs and managers who are humans still. So is that human-centered design?
Yes.
Yes.
What was the question? Sorry, I was
Who's
reading a comment.
the ugh, and you say useless.
You said leaders and managers, and I thought the question, are leaders and managers humans? Was
Yes,
what I
leaders and
thought the
managers
question
are
was.
human. So basically, it's coming down to what even is human-centered design because I think there is a misunderstanding of what it is and then a misunderstanding in applying it. And that is why it is not successful.
Well, okay. So for me, human-centered design is figuring out the pains and gains of your end user. You leverage the gains. The gains are the good bits that you're already doing really well. Keep doing those, and the pains are the things you've got to fix. If you fix all the pains, you keep the gains across an entire user journey, then I think you have impact.
Hmm.
That's my that's my definition ish, I guess.
And so with that, what are the problems that you have seen in applying that?
Um, well, I think I go back to sorry, Andrew has. Thank you, Andrew, for pasting your link there. Appreciate that. We'll have a look at that afterwards. Oh, I'm actually at my friend from Poland and the e-learning fusion e-learning conference over in Warsaw. Do not teach people to use AI. Teach AI how to use people. Now, AI is going to have to be a different live stream because I've got so much to talk about on AI, and it's about time that someone made sense of it all because it isn't just about creating stuff. But what was the question?
Oh my life, Toby. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you what I think because you're clearly looking at
Yes,
this
please tell me
differently.
what you
So
think.
I think the problems when with applying human-centered is you're only applying it to a small part of the journey. You're like, oh, we're
Mhm.
going to do human-centered
Yes,
for our onboarding, or oh, we're going to do human-centered for becoming a. I always talk manager because I work in retail, but like we're going to do it for becoming a new manager, for example, rather than looking at a more holistic overall journey. I think one of the other problems is you people ask people what they want or what they need. Like, that's a terrible thing. User researchers will tell you never ask people what they want because they don't know what
yeah.
they want. Um, so that's another one that is absolutely a big problem. And often learners aren't, at the end of the day, the decision makers in that the business says, okay, we want to achieve this thing or we want to do this. And it doesn't really matter whether it's what learners want or need or will use.
That would be also my answer. But um the thing that I've seen too many times is that people perpetuate to use a human-centered design process, but end up because of the system they work in. So this again, not slagging off any individual, but because of the environment they work in, they are disabled from using that insight to design the things that actually need to happen. So learning team goes off and gets loads of user insight and figures out loads of pain points, none of which are related to the thing that they've been asked to design. In fact,
Hmm.
the user insight is actively telling you L&D don't need to do something here. Actually, it's something else. But one of two things happen. Either the L&D keeps that insight to themselves, and doesn't share that with the rest of the organization, or the L&D team does share that with the rest of the organization, but nothing's done with it.
Yeah.
And this is where our concept of product and service design as a function rather than L&D or internal comms or whatever, product and service design is much more interesting as a concept, because then you can start, you have not the authority, but the autonomy to look at that end-to-end journey and design for it. Until you get that, and you just go, oh, I'm going to just design onboarding, or I'm just going to design leadership, or I'm just going to, like, it doesn't matter. Like, you can use as much human user insight as you want. It doesn't matter.
So why do you think people do that? Or don't design in a bigger thing and don't take that findings and put it into anything else?
It's too hard. In most large organizations, it's too hard because you don't know who to go to. If you do take it to them, they generally say, well, you're in the L&D team, don't tell me what to do. Vice versa, the data doesn't flow back to the L&D team. Like, there's some people protect that data. So I think there's this whole, siloed nature of how HR people teams structure themselves that just literally inhibits any of this to happen. And until you break down those silos and create this more holistic team, I don't think you'll ever get there. I genuinely don't.
But isn't that what like a learning business partner or an HR business partner is supposed to be doing?
Don't even get me started on business partnering. Business partnering is a model that is dead,
Okay,
for my
no,
money.
why? Why? Particularly we're talking learning, remember, but why?
Well, learning business partnering. So I've just never seen anyone do it well, really. And so I think if you applied a customer success mindset rather than a business partnering mindset, you'd probably end up in a much better space. Now, there is some subtle similarities, but some huge differences in those two methodologies. But I think, and again, someone I used to work with, I've worked with a couple of times, a learning leader, has been actively trying to get rid of his learning business partners, because he's like, all they do is try and figure out learning problems. And it's like, you're kind of hunting for your own work. And he said, even at a HR level, the HR generalists working those business partnering roles have such a lack of understanding about what needs to happen in various areas to make that performance change. Like, it that they kind of come at it from a too generalist HR angle. So both those roles don't really do any good in bringing the right problems, the right measures to a individual team that's going to design something.
Mm. Okay, fair.
Okay,
Thank you for your thoughts. No, I don't really have anything else to say on it. I just think back to my time in New Zealand in particular, and I just think of the business partners, the learning business partners who were there, and it's like I didn't really understand what they did or who they talked to, and it never really translated. Or no, that's not fair. There was some good stuff that they did, and some good stuff that then got translated into like useful things, but a lot of it was just a load of, yeah, you're right. Learning not being very well respected. We're here to help you. And like, yeah, good. Just go away and let's do what we need to do.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Just have a look at some comments. Got one, another two from Andy. You need to take a comprehensive human-centered approach across an organization. You can't use it in pockets.
Nice.
That it's I'm just going to take that quote verbatim and use that in the future. Cheers, Andy. It's like disconnecting cities. The country would fail if they weren't connected. End users, employees will not feel safe if only the elements of the business / their journey are human-centered. Andy, you are our kind of people. And when you're trying to respond to an issue based on human-centered design processes, if they are then engaging with areas that aren't human-centered, then it falls flat. That's a great point, which we haven't talked about, right? So like if your learning team applies a human-centered design approach and the rest of your HR team doesn't, then that is such a good point. Like, I think that gets to the crux of what we're talking about, right?
I mean, definitely, if you think of like if you've got like talent and the people who set your like your goals, if you're talking about learning as a progression towards goals, which in itself it shouldn't be, really, I don't think.
Yeah.
Honestly, I just think
No.
everybody would just be better with like a YouTube. I spoke to somebody once, worked in gaming, who said that basically their learning team curates content from all of the people who work in the thing. They encourage and they support anybody who's solved a problem to just make a quick video about it and put it on the central thing. And then basically what they did is they curated things that were all related, but obviously they had like functionality, search functionality and that. So as a designer or developer or whatever, you could go like, how do I do this? And then you would just have a load of videos from people within the organization who had done something similar.
And L&D are the worst people to like that. That is not a managed process. The output, synthesizing, curating, all that kind of stuff, that is, but there, like, you shouldn't be trying to manage the input of that. And that's what most internal comms and L&D teams try and manage that. There's a platform on there called Storytagger, which essentially tries to overly manage the content creation process. No YouTuber, TikToker, Instagrammer worth their salt is using a platform like that to create that content. Like,
No.
it just gets in the way. So I think there's this element of relinquishing control. And I don't know if Will is still here, but like Will kind of, this is a while ago now, I think he mentioned that like startups, companies of 50 people or less, companies I've worked for who had 150 people, don't have an L&D team. I worked for an L&D team that had 150 people, or a company, L&D company that had 150 people.
Not an L&D team of 150.
No, that would be
Could you
ridiculous.
imagine?
But if you're in an L&D team with 150 people, I'd watch out. I think there might be redundancies coming your way. But they're an L&D company of 150 people. Did they have an L&D person or team? No. So how are they managing their performance? And why is it that they're selling and delivering something that manages an increased performance in that way? Andrew, well, we've got Andy and we've got Andrew. So this is Andrew. Learning BPs are too often training BPs. Training is one strand of learning, absolutely. If all you have is training, everything is a training need. Enabling learning business partners to understand capability equals capacity and capability. Capacity plus ability, but capacity with a big CAP. If that, you have to read it to make sense, and you haven't got the comments open. But there we go. See you later, Pete.
Oh, I think I'm shopping. Yeah, because I'm an idiot.
Do you want to end the live stream? You've got to go and get your shopping.
No, I booked the shopping 3 till 4 like I normally do. I'm forgetting it was a Wednesday.
And should we go to your last point then, before we?
Okay, so the last one we talk about is the fact that it's people have an outcome in mind when they set it off. And this is particularly true, I think, for things that we've done, like as an external. Maybe it's very similar for internal as well. People have an idea that I want to create a leadership workshop or what have you. So I want you to do, whatever it is, number of days of insights, discovery, and user research, and then you're going to inform that how to design that webinar. And I think the reason why people do that, it's expensive and it's uncertain and it makes it hard to trust. So people want to know what they're going to get out at the other end.
If someone says design a webinar, well, first and foremost, don't do a webinar. Webinars are rubbish.
What's the difference between a webinar and a live stream? Like, sorry, tangent. But like, they're basically the same thing. But why are they not the same thing?
The human. Like there is an over. I think what I would do, not this live stream because like this is free form. No pun intended. But someone on Twitch does not plan that content. They have a rough idea of what they're going to do, but they don't plan it they don't plan it and script it within an inch of their life. Any LinkedIn live I've seen, apart from a few cool people out there, Emma Jamil, Ashley Bright, Jude Life, and the people that have been on Leading with Influence, do it in the right way, right? That you turn up and you enable. It's what you said about what Chris O'Gara does really well at 1J, is that 1J Esports, is that it's about creating that conversation. And I'm not saying we're masters at it by any sense, but we're not running a webinar. Like, how much do you actually need a deck to run through to have a conversation with other people? I think I ran a training session online the other day. I think we had 3 Mentimeters, and they were like the jumping off points for great conversation. And then there was a few other bits we did, but I think it's this informality. But I go back to my earlier point about when you talked about kind of user generated content and organization. It's informality. The thing that makes user generated content is informality and autonomy. And when L&D tries to push out an initiative to manage user-generated content, you, by its very essence, kill the concept of user-generated content because you're trying to centralize user-generated content. That's for me fundamentally flawed.
Well, it's an oxymoron, isn't it?
Yes,
It's an
it is.
oxymoron, meaning it's the complete opposites. They don't work together.
Yeah, it's
So
about
let's come back to.
oh, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, let's come back to expensive and uncertain, so people don't trust the process. Human-centered design.
Who doesn't trust
So
the
your
process?
stakeholders, you're often your budget holder, the person who's signing it off.
Well, because what you're suggesting is something not in their known universe. That's the issue, and because it's already too close to the known universe as well. It's like, oh, I'm still going to do learning and development. I'm going to do it slightly differently. Okay, I don't care how you do it. Just do the thing that I want. Like, I don't think you're moving the needle enough by saying I'm going to apply human-centered design to learning. Like, it requires a fundamental shift. By the learning and development team still existing with the same talent, structured in the same way, really what's human-centered design going to do differently? And I had this conversation with a learning leader yesterday. Like, well, they have tried to implement this approach and they've ultimately had to get rid of people because it's just like, well, the learning team that was isn't the learning team that I need because they just can't challenge, they can't design from a human-centered perspective. We just had a few more comments. Andrew has come back saying he was part of a learning team of 150 for an organization of 63,000. Okay, so we have a learning team of 150 people. Oh, it's HMRC. Great. There's a whole journey I could go down there because my wife also works in public sector. Will Proctor chimes in, our good friend Will, saying he would not have lasted this long if it was a webinar. Next week, maybe we just run it as a webinar and see how many people stay on.
Yeah, but what is yeah, okay, fine.
And he's
Slides.
also said that teams aren't often able to articulate the value of a non-learning solution, which goes back to your point about data. Like, if you had a robust, holistic data strategy with your HR team, you wouldn't have to think about what the measures are because the measures would be there for everybody to see. How is your performance as a contributor to that function? I'm not going to say L&D team in this case, but someone who contributes that function about what that tangible output is. And I think that's we're just measured on output. HR and L&D measure on output. Did we put these policies in place? Did we deliver the compliance training? Did we deliver this? Tick, 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 tick. Great. Did we generate any value for the organization? Whoa. I
That's
ticked all the
impossible. You
boxes like
can't
you
measure
asked.
ROI. And also,
When that's the
have you not found people talking about it in terms of ROI? Sorry, my husband's walking in
you
with a
didn't buy much
banana.
shopping. He was very quick. Someone just delivered a banana.
I hope not. I really hope not. But when people talk about measurement, have you like the last few years, it's always been about the ROI, as in you have to get your money's return. When really it's not about necessarily return, it's about impact on your strategic business objectives, some of which are financial, some of which will be different.
Well, I think ultimately, we've talked about this before, but why do you have people in an organization? You have employees, so your company makes more money. So ultimately, the measure is how much money is your company making? Is it making more? Is it making less? And is the spend going up on that human capital, or is it going down? That's a very broad measure, and there's a whole subset of measures that we measure underneath that. But quite broadly, are you able to prove that because you've either delivered people the right stuff or given them a better experience, that's translated into better company performance?
Yes. Although I would push back that better company performance is only financial, because if it were only financial, you would do the thing that would make you the most money all of the time. And you would just be therefore making decisions that may not be in the best interest of your company long term because you're just chasing the revenue, particularly
which is interesting because we can always come back to the Ryanair model, right, where they've kind of optimized lack of employee experience for their own benefit. It's very clever. Very clever what Ryanair are doing, and they outperform every airline on our benchmark at the moment. So yeah, if you've not seen our case study, we might paste in chat, but that airline case study is particularly interesting. I just noticed the time, Emily.
I know.
Bloody hell. time flies when you're having fun. We might have to do another learning one. For everyone in chat, we've not come up with next week's title yet. So here's a bit of audience engagement. I'm going to say 3 words. I just want you to put one of those words in chat, and whatever word gets the most likes or types, comments, we'll do that topic. So it's going to be advocacy, data, or AI. So if you're still watching, you're still tuning in, if you put one of those in chat, we will come up with a conversation about one of those 3 topics. There is a slight delay, so I'm looking at the chat expecting people to be typing away, but we know there is a delay here. How do you want to summarize this, Emily, this chat?
It's been quite focused on the things that are going wrong, but it can be done right, but it's not easy, I think. Ultimately, being a little bit humble, that always learning mindset, but being open to new ideas and from different places, going and experiencing things from how other people do it differently is what's ultimately going to help you be a better designer.
And that's a really good point. We should we think, well, we've tested this with numerous clients, right? We think we have an answer, and it's one of many potential answers. But I think that's where we need to go to, right? We've got a design of what the future of employee experience, what that future looks like, and call it whatever you want. I don't really care what it's called, but the current structures, systems, processes, environments that we're expected to deliver stuff to employees just doesn't work. It's not personalized enough. It's not data led enough. It's it's just not good enough, quite frankly. We've got one for data and one for advocacy, so we'll have to maybe blend.
You might have to do it in a poll.
That's a good idea. We should do that.
Like
Will and Andy, we will add in your votes into that, so you don't have to worry about engaging with a poll again if you don't want to. But that's all cool. Right, let's get out of here. I've got a meeting to go to at 4.
I've probably got some shopping to put away. Yeah.
What do you mean? He didn't just bring it in and then dump it on the site? Surely not.
I think that's probably what's happened. The freezer's stuck on the freezer and everything else I suspect is all over the floor.
That is truly unbelievable.
I'll let you know next
right.
week. Oh, he's just a guilty look. That's exactly what's happened.
I love it.
All right, everybody. Have a nice week.